Hey guys, welcome back to Min TCG. Today we're going to be watching a Kaido versus Kid game where I was the Kaido player in the most recent Moonmen tournament. This is game 1. Let's dive right into it. My opening hand consists of an Onigashima, a Blast Breath, a Brachio Bomber, a Kurozumi Higurashi, and a Fukuro Kuju. I decide to keep it. Opening Onigashima is really all you need to keep a Kaido hand, but this hand also has a lot of really good tempo. I am going first in this game, so I've got two really strong turn 3 plays with either Brachio Bomber or Fukuro Kuju depending on the situation. On my first turn, I play one Dawn and pass. My opponent uses one Dawn to play Capone Gang Beige and then passes to me. I draw Who's Who and begin by swinging at my opponent's leader. He takes that damage with no triggers, so I play Onigashima so I can start getting my extra Dawn every turn. My opponent plays Raizo and then attaches one to his kid leader swinging at my Kaido. I decide to take the damage, getting another Higurashi to my hand. I begin my next turn using Onigashima's effect to get an extra Dawn for the turn, bringing me up to 7. Then I choose to swing at my opponent's kid with my Kaido. After he takes the damage and there are no triggers, I play my Fukuro Kuju so I can start to get the tempo in my favor. At this point, my opponent swings with his Beige. Now, obviously this isn't going to deal any damage, but he just wants to get the draw off Raizo, so afterwards he attaches one Dawn to Raizo and swings with him. After he gets his draw, I decide to take the damage, getting an additional Blast Breath to my hand. My opponent then decides to attack my leader with his kid, and not wanting to go to 2 life so early in the game, I decide to counter out of it with one of the Higurashis in my hand. After this, my opponent plays the 5-drop Law, allowing him to return this now tapped and kind of dead Beige to his hand to play a killer down, kind of cheating the curve and also not completely wasting that Beige since he was forced to attack with it. I begin my turn by using Onigashima effect. This allows me to get an extra Dawn. Then I play down a Who's Who to kill his killer, removing one of his blockers. And fortunately enough, I then use my Brachio Bomber to get rid of his other Law. He's now out of both of his blockers. Then I attack into his Raizo with my leader. He thinks about it for a moment, but he realizes that if he decides to protect Raizo here, Fukuro Kuju is just going to swing into him, and he's not going to be able to defend the 5k swing and then the 8k swing. So he lets his Raizo die here. My Fukuro Kuju then attacks his leader, and he decides to take this damage and gets no triggers. And with that, I pass my turn. To try and come back from that board wipe, my opponent decides to play 7-drop Kid and a Beige, which is an awful lot of defense for him to suddenly get. He then swings into my leader, and not wanting to waste a Blast Breath or lose a blocker, I decide to take it and get a Black Maria to my hand. So another blocker is actually pretty nice here. After that, he passes turn to me. I draw a Brachio Bomber for turn and decide to begin by swinging my Fukuro Kuju at his leader, which he promptly blocks with his Beige. I decide to play Queen before attacking with my leader so that I know how much Dawn I can put onto my leader to try and get over this 7-drop Kid blocker. I use Onigashima to recover the Dawn I would lose for Queen's Dawn -1, and I draw a Who's Who and an Uta. After a lot of back and forth trying to decide whether I should discard the Who's Who or the Brachio Bomber, I decide to discard the Who's Who. I decide to attach 2 to my leader so that he's 7k, and it can't just be free blocked with this big kid. He does decide to block, and he counters with a killer, which frankly is a relatively dead card in this matchup, so I understand. Afterwards, I pay 2 in order to play down a Higurashi for another blocker, and pass my turn. My opponent decides to retaliate with an 8-drop Kid, which frankly, I'm not currently extremely well equipped to deal with. He attaches one Dawn to it and decides to use its effect, and he plays down the killer blocker. Now that could be really scary because it gives him more card draw. However, since he only has one active Dawn, he ends up attaching it to his 7-drop Kid so that he can swing with it and then restand it at the end of the turn, as opposed to getting the card draw from killer. He needs those extra blockers. He decides to attack with his 7-drop Kid. He's attacking my Fukuro Kuju, so I only need 1k to block as we're both 8k. I block with the Black Maria in my hand. He then swings his leader into my leader, but fortunately since I have Queen up, it's basically just a free block 5 to 6k. Then he passes turn to me. I draw a 7-drop King, which I promptly play so that I can get rid of his killer blocker, and I have a 7k body to swing into his kid in the future if I can't get rid of it this turn. I only needed a Dawn -1 by using Onigashima to recover one of the Dawn I would have used for my king. Afterwards, I attached 2 to my Fukurokuju, leaving 1 up for a Blast Breath, but making him 10k, which is kind of hard to block, and I swing 10k at his 8-drop kid. He counters out with an Izo and a Shachi, after which I pass my turn. He plays an Izo at the start of his turn to rest my Higurashi, and then attacks into it with a Kid Leader, trying to gain some control over the board presence. I decide to block with my queen since it's a relatively free block, and I think that if my queen dies, I'm kind of okay here. Much more important for me to protect this Fukurokuju. He attacks into my queen with his 7-drop kid. I actually decide to Blast Breath this because I think he really wants to prioritize getting the queen off the board, so I'm kind of giving him the illusion that he has control over letting this queen die, when in reality I had sacrificed it all along, not really being too concerned about it. So he ends up attaching 1 Dawn to his 8-drop kid, and he swings that into my queen as well. This time I very promptly and happily let my queen die, as I was ready to do so from the beginning. He then plays Law, returning Izo to hand to play Penguin. However, unfortunately, he has not drawn a new Shachi since he countered out with one earlier, so he does not get the full combo off here. I draw a queen for turn and begin my turn by playing Brachio Bomber, killing his Law so that he has 1 less blocker that he can use to protect this kid. Then I promptly swing Fukurokuju into his 8-drop kid. He blocks with his Shachi, which strikes me as odd. It makes me think maybe his hand has no counter power. So I put 2 onto my king and swing into his kid, which he uses an Izo to counter out of. After that, I pass turn to him. He plays and uses a Jewelry Bonnie, and off of the Jewelry Bonnie he gets another 7-drop kid. He plays this 7-drop kid he just got, and then attaches 1 Dawn to his 8-drop kid and uses it to swing into my king. I do not want to let my king die, so I use a Blast Breath to protect it. He then attacks my leader with his Kid Leader, and I counter out of it with an Uta, after which he passes to me. I draw an X-Drake for turn, and decide to begin the attack by swinging Fukurokuju into his 8-drop kid, which, much to my surprise, he just lets die at this point, deciding he no longer has enough resources to defend it. Then I swing my Husu into his Bonnie just to try and get it off the board, and he once again lets it die, really valuing these blocker kids he has. Before I do anything else, I decide to play my queen so that I know what all of my options are. I use Onigashima to get back the Dawn I would lose for playing queen, and I draw a Black Maria and an ulti, and decide that with 2 blockers already on board, it's safer for me to give up a blocker than it is for me to give up a 2k. I attach 2 Dawn to my leader so that he cannot just free block the attack with these kids he has, and swing at him. He takes the damage and gets a killer, which he decides to trigger to kill my Who's Who. I decide to use my leader effect to take away his last life, and I'm glad I did because it ends up being a Paradise Waterfall, which I do not want him to have access to. Then I attach 2 Dawn to my king, in hopes that if he decides to block, the kid will die that he blocks with, slowly whittling down his resources. Sure enough, he can't defend it but needs to block to not lose, and afterwards I pass the turn to him. He plays a Bonnie looking for something that can get him out of this situation. Using its effect, he gets the killer blocker. He then plays 5-drop Law, returning this Bonnie to his hand and playing his newly obtained killer. He then attaches 1 Dawn to his killer so he can get the draw on the next turn, and 1 Dawn to his kid so he can swing with it and then activate it at the end of his turn. He swings his kid into my Fukurokuju. I want to keep this alive to try and go for game next turn, so I block it with my Higurashi. Knowing that a leader's swing is pointless with my queen on board, he just passes the turn to me. I play Who's Who that I just now draw to get rid of his killer blocker, to get rid of some of his defense and card draw, using Onigashima to negate the Dawn -1 on my Who's Who. I begin by attacking with my Fukurokuju at his leader. Knowing that he can't take any damage or he loses, he decides to block with his 6-drop Law. From here, still feeling very much in the lead, I attack with my king at his leader. He ends up blocking with his kid and using a Bonnie from his hand to defend the kid. This seemed like a fake out to me, so I just attach everything to my leader and swing for 7k, and sure enough, that is enough damage to close out this game. Today's video was sponsored by Top Deck TCG. This is an awesome website where not only can you buy singles for some of your favorite trading card games, but it acts as a hub for various content creators so you can stay up to date in those games. This is their homepage. As you can see, they currently carry Flesh and Blood, Digimon, Transformers, and Star Wars Destiny. They are going to be carrying One Piece in the winter when its official American release comes out. If you go over to game videos and podcasts, you can see some of your favorite content creators, including your favorite One Piece content creators, for all of these various games so that you can stay up to date on what is good right now. It's all very easy to use, and the guy is great. And if you use your promo code TheMoonMen, not case sensitive at all, you'll get 10% off any order you place. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. I certainly hope you did. You can find links to my Twitch and my Patreon in the description, as well as the promo code and the links to Top Deck TCG. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.